Yeah, go ahead and hand them out.
Okay. Well, and just even subdivision. It's like a double vote.
Right. It makes sense to be a non-voting.
I just thought meeting with your wife is too late. So standing right there is something really magical. Only in a small town could that happen.
Yeah. Starting off in space. Well, I heard somebody.
You're still standing after all the challenges with the project.
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, I'm here. Oh. I'm gonna go over and we're on the hurry, so hopefully for tonight. That sounds good. And I think I finally understood what they were trying to say this morning. They didn't say very well, but I think I finally figured out what math they were using. Okay. So we can go over that. Okay.
Thank you. Just kidding, just kidding. Yeah, there's actually only 2 computers that are compatible on the screen, and they're both in use right now. And we should be operable.
That's true. Why did they not allow you to do that? Well,
It's better say-
there's one, there's
Probably one.
And then
No, it's still pretty.
they'll be done with
I
this
think
week,
we
right?
probably, maybe thought it was, taking us.
I know, it's not so, I don't know, but where's his list in the actual paper, and then it's possible to figure out how to, you know, so it's just the case, but yeah. So, right, that's why, once you know this time, so.
They're all matches. Yeah, there's nothing in the. I love how they do conservative day, liberal day, conservative day, liberal day. Cracks me up.
We gotta keep all their buyers happy.
No, I know, but it would be nice if, you know, they just have some mix every day.
Surprise.
Yeah.
All right, is everyone ready? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Present.
Commissioner Hoagland, here, Commissioner Friedman,
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz, Commissioner Sandberg.
Present.
We'll now have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Ms. Rice, the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so our first order of business are consent items. Are there any consent items that any of the commissioners would like to pull before we vote on these? Is there a motion from the commission?
Yeah, I make a motion, we approve consent items A, B, C.
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, a second by Commissioner Hoagland. May we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Or motion passes. Tonight there are no proclamations. We do have some scheduled public comment. Our first one is Joni Kresh, Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council. Cressage.
That's it, 2 syllables. Why is it 2 syllables? It does look like 1 syllable, doesn't it?
It can.
That's the most common mispronunciation.
You understand all three?
And the answer would be Cressage. No, but why is it 2 syllables? Oh, just is.
Oh, I thought there was some grammar lesson involved with that.
Would you like me to use the
Yes, come
microphone?
use the mic, and you don't need to sign in tonight because you're already on the record as a scheduled public comment.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Joni Krasich, and I am the co-chair of Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council. We are an affiliate of Northern Plains Resource Council. There are 13 affiliates in the state of Montana, and we are one of the newer ones. We came into being about 3 years ago, and I want to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing in our community here. We now have 4 groups, active committees, and one of them is solar projects. We're interested in promoting solar on buildings that return a savings to our community. So our first project was getting solar panels on the library, and that does exactly what our goal is, namely that the savings in energy which the solar panels provide. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. When there's plenty of, I started, I wasn't sure if I had enough. The panels are providing an energy savings, which is providing a dollar savings for the library. And that means that the library can have extra funds that go back into programming for all of us. If you have a chance, stop by the library. If you haven't seen the real-time monitor, it's behind the director Mitch's desk, and it's really quite fascinating. So you can go in there, stop by, take a peek, and any time of the day you can see how much energy is being generated by those panels. But it also has lots of other information, so it's really kind of a fun thing. So that was our first project. We have in the hopper right now the Senior Center. Just last Tuesday, On-Site Energy gave a feasibility report out for the Senior Center board. You can imagine that expansive roof actually turns out to be quite perfect. And once again, this is a project that will return a savings to our community. I know there's tremendous pride here about that Senior Center, those 24 low-income apartments. The savings that this project will provide are going to, again, benefit our community because they'll go right back into programming there. We're also hopeful about a project, solar project in the Shane. And then I know you've been on the roller coaster with the challenges with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, but it looks as though a small installation is going to be possible there. We have all kinds of dreams. There are many, many, many public buildings in this town that are doing good things for the people of Livingston. When we're able to get solar, we can generate savings, and that goes right back into more good things. So we're also working on becoming experts on, believe it or not, forms. Rural Energy for America program is targeted for small businesses. And of course, we want our small businesses to not just survive, but thrive. The forms turn out to be really onerous, and are a real barrier for owners. So we have one member who is determined to become an expert to do the translation and to be available to coach people through that process. We're very excited about another committee which is working on a carbon diet campaign that will involve a website where individuals can sign on and pledge to learn to lose 5,000 pounds of carbon. And basically just a consciousness kind of thing to be aware of which things you do that do create carbon emissions and how simple things, changes that you can make in routines, such as, for instance, choosing to line dry clothes can reduce your individual carbon footprint. We'll have a way to calculate so that we can measure what the entire community is doing. So we're excited about that. We have a group that works with people who are served by Park Electric. Park Electric has much more freedom than we do here. So for instance, they are perfectly free to set up what's called community energy projects, whereby a large solar installation goes in, people get to buy into it, and then they reap the savings from that. So we have a group that's working on that to just open up more possibilities for Park Electric customers. We have a group that would like to begin working with city and county people, including you, to look into policy, things that might be possible in terms of encouraging efficiency and clean energy. And that group is coming together in the fall. I want to thank you deeply for your support for PACE legislation. I think most of you know it came really close to winning. Just missed it by a hair's breadth. Livingston played a really oversized role in the near win. And I think we should all be very, very proud of that. According to the League of Cities and Towns, Livingston and other cities that are considered to be self-governing actually have the authority to create PACE districts and place PACE assessments on properties, just as they would create any other sort of improvement district. So probably not possible to issue PACE bonds for this. So it would require relying on private financing from banks and credit unions. Northern Plains will be reconvening the stakeholders who worked on the statewide campaign and begin talking through what a program could look like, and we'll be following up with all of you soon with any news that we have on that. And last of all, I wanted to share an October 5 invitation with you. We're having an annual celebration for our group, for YBCC. We've invited the mayor of Greensburg, Kansas, to come and be the keynote speaker. It's quite an incredible story there. Greensburg was 95% destroyed in a tornado 10 years ago. And when they dug out from the horror of that and met to decide what they were going to do in the future, they said to each other, renewable energy is not a political issue. It's a common sense issue, and we're going to do it. And they have. They're getting all sorts of awards, and they're really on the map. So Bob Dixon is going to be the speaker on October 5th, and I'm also hoping that there'll be an opportunity for some kind of a roundtable discussion with him when he's in town a few days before and afterwards that might include any of you who would be interested in meeting and talking with him. So finally, I just want to thank you, all of you, for the work you do for the community. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have today or anytime later.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Just opening it up, is there any questions or clarification for John from the commission? No? Commissioner Oakland?
Jolene, how is the organization helping to like the senior center, which I know Mel's on the board of? Well, and
Well,
how do you guys work together?
Well, the main challenge that any project has, individual or community, is funding. And so there are funds available, and we expect that there will be some USB funds. Those are grant funds that are administered through Northwestern Energy. And then there'll be a certain amount of money that will need to be raised to make up the difference. So what we're trying to do is generate enthusiasm for solar. We're raise awareness of solar and position ourselves to get better and better at the fundraising and grant writing part of it. So those are the things that we are doing. The other thing I want to mention is that I know all of you know this, but anybody who is the executive director of a public building or small businesses, everybody is working to their capacity. So having somebody who can connect the dots, who can make phone calls, who can help with that part is really actually a big deal. So we're there for that too.
I'd like to follow that up a little bit. We did have a presentation last Tuesday, probably an hour and a half, from a gentleman's company that was involved with the library here. Awful lot of research was done before that meeting. We had a very strong executive director in Nicole Devine that's pushing these things and is doing a great job. From the standpoint of solar, I lived in the DC area, had a business here quite a few years ago, and solar was starting to be talked about, and I knew quite a few gentlemen were ready to kick off and get involved in solar, and the government just never got around to passing some pretty important legislation to get the thing going. So it has come, even in the last few short years, the price of panels have come down. There's an awful lot of things happening. And for our particular situation, money that could be saved in the future for the senior center is enormous. So we're going to keep pursuing this. And Joni, we can do a great job. And that's what we appreciate. We got some good things going. So thank you for that.
Good. Any other questions? I'm always available. Thank you much.
Hey, thanks a lot, John. We appreciate it. Next on the agenda is Andrea Davis and Heather Millen regarding Homeward. Update on redevelopment of the old hospital space on 19th Street.
Good evening. My name is Heather McMillan. I'm the Housing Development Director at Homeward, and this is not Andrea Davis. This is our architect, Ron Nimitz, with NE45. So does he need to check in? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just state your name and address for the records.
Ron Nimitz, NE45 Architecture, 322 West Calendar Street, Livingston.
Well, thanks for having us tonight. We're really excited to give you guys an update. We have been working hard over the last couple of months. We submitted a letter of intent to the Board of Housing this year again, and we were able to be one of the 8 projects selected to move on to applications. So those applications are due, we're saying September 1st instead of September 5th, so that it doesn't ruin the weekend, but we have a good backup. But we're putting full speed ahead. We went ahead and procured Ron's firm through a process about a month ago, and we have asked them to work feverishly to prove that we can put 34 units of housing in the old hospital building in Livingston, and they have done so. And so we had another meeting today, public design conversation, a lot of, well, I say a lot, there were a few people that came by and we talked about entrance and a few other fun things and talked about the unit layout. But I will say 2 weeks ago, we had probably 70 people show up for a tour of the building. So I think there were a few people interested at the time, but I'm gonna let Ron kind of walk through and give you guys a little snapshot of a picture of what's going on with the project here in a sec. But I am also here tonight to ask you guys for a letter of support for that application like we asked last year. And we feel like we're positioned really well for we feel like we're in a really good position. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 times bite at the apple, so to speak, to get the application in. But we made a pretty big statement last year, and we have a lot of support this year, and we're really excited. We also took the step, and I'm not sure if we told you guys this in a meeting or not, but NeighborWorks Montana actually purchased the hospital on our behalf and is holding it for the use for affordable housing. So we're committed, we're in all the way. We're just going to take our time and get through it so that we can get this project done, whether it be this year or next year, but we're hoping for this year. Ron, would you like to go ahead and give them an update on plans?
So what we've done so far is we've looked at the capabilities of the existing structure, what we can actually get into the existing facility. The goal was to get 34 units. We've been talking with SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, about getting the building on the National Register, which also then puts some limitations on the design. So we really can't move exterior any of the windows on any of the primary elevations. The building being on an entire city block, basically every elevation is a primary elevation, except for a couple courtyards. So we were able to get, we were able to get 7 studio units, 15 one-bedroom units, and 12 two-bedroom units. And the different colors, we call this a bubble diagram. So it's really not a full detailed floor plan layout of every single unit, because every single one's going to be different. But we're trying to keep them fairly consistent. So you can see that the studios, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, are all kind of intermixed. Because of the historic preservation requirements, we've left all of the interior corridors the same. We're also looking at how do we enhance the front entrance, the elevation, while not causing issues with the historic pieces and parts of the building. And then we're also looking at how do we develop the site and make it a more residential feel. You know, it's an existing hospital, so our goal is to not make it feel like an existing hospital, but also kind of respect that it was at one point and respect the history behind the building. The Western Montana Western Health Center is going to remain, so we're looking at them as a neighbor and how do we incorporate that piece into the site. We're also looking at the existing helipad and other existing features on the site. The helipad may become, you know, a gazebo, an outdoor kind of living space. We've got an amazing landscape architect on our team for this project, and we think that one way to enhance the existing facility and not feel like an institutional building, a hospital, is to really work on the landscaping and site conditions around the facility. Some of the feedback we've got in some of the meetings is pet friendly. You know, that's something we need to address. On-site amenities, you know, common spaces for the residents to gather, washrooms, you know, laundry facilities, game rooms, something for the places for the kids to be. So we're really taking a lot of input from the community and trying to incorporate it into the project. We've got some parking that we need to kind of pick up. We need to add somewhere in the range of 15 spaces on site. We've got plenty of site of land on the property to do those things, but again, we're gonna be very respectful of the neighbors and how do we address parking and those items. We're talking about a community garden. Our meeting today was at the food pantry, so we got some really good feedback from them, and we think there could be some partnerships with them and other community members on doing some type of community garden, and what does that become? So, I don't know if there's anything else I'm missing, but we're getting some really good feedback. I'm really excited about this project. I think there's a huge opportunity to take a blighted building, a building that's been sitting for a few years, and make it something that the community needs. I will pull up quickly, just kind of a large.
Before we move on from there, you were talking about the unit mix and the color. Okay, there's
So
a
this one-
This is it.
there's a
That's
legend
where we're
there. Okay.
thinking, like, yeah.
What colors represented?
Yep, so the blue is the studio units, the green is the 1 bedroom, and the orange is the 2 bedroom. Red is office space, so we have a kind of a centralized office space for a property manager. And then what we call common space. And really, we're trying to, with the amount of residential use that we're trying to get into this building, we're using up just about all of the space on that level for residences. So we've got a little bit of common space. We're going to create some breakout spaces in the hallways for residents to gather, as they cross each other. We want this to be a community. We want this building to have a strong community feel. So we think having residents pass each other in the hallways could be an important piece to making this a successful project. So again, this board is the actual. This is kind of the most typical layout for the 1 bedroom, the studio, and the 2 bedroom. As I noted, because of the window configurations, these change slightly. But we've got a studio unit here that's roughly 400 square feet. That's our average studio unit size, and they're very livable units. So we've got kitchen. We try to create a dining space in each unit that could maybe second as an office if someone prefers to have that you eat at a countertop or something like that. In this unit, we've got a bedroom, closet. Storage space is extremely important. All of the units in this facility will be handicapped adaptable. So we'll have the required handicap accessible units, but every single unit in here will be handicap adaptable. So we've got that's a huge opportunity for us to grow. Bedrooms, we're trying to keep our bedrooms roughly around 12 feet by 12 feet, which is a good size bedroom. Obviously, the studios being studios, it's not a bedroom, but generally the sizes are about the same. Couple comments we got. We're trying to get in the 2 bedrooms. We're trying to get a powder room. Right now, we just have a single bathroom that's accessible from both bedrooms, but in those 2 bedroom units, we think maybe it'd be nice to have a powder room. What other things have we talked about?
Just still taking feedback.
Yeah, we're still, we've reached out to the community in a pretty strong way. We've got really good feedback. We're going to continue to ask for feedback as we progress. We're in the early stages of the project, so like I said, it's the bubble diagrams with general ideas of what each unit's may look like. So, like I said, we're really excited about the project, and we do want to respect the building that's there. I think as a historic preservationist myself, I think that's really important for us to do. So, thank you.
What I appreciate about Ron and his team is they're actually listening to us and listening for what we've learned over the years with rental housing and incorporating it, and him being a neighbor to the property. He has vested interest in doing a nice job. So it's going to work out nicely. Really excited about it. We feel like this level of detail that we have put into plans, the construction estimates, just really proves to the Board of Housing that we're shovel ready. And so that's the intent. We want to show that we can go and get housing in the ground as fast as possible. I would really hope somebody would tell Joni that we are planning on doing solar panels. I didn't get to catch her on the way out, but I agree with her. It's a huge community benefit to be working on that, and it'll help our residents and cost utilities less, so it should be nice. Also wanted to just be here and be present and ask if you guys have questions, and if we need to clarify anything, give you more routine updates, available for any kind of update or comment. And again, hoping you guys will, I think we beefed up the letter of support and met the consolidated plan, and would just hope to get you guys to sign on for that again this year, because we do think it's a big need here in Livingston.
Right. So, are there any questions tonight? Commissioner Sandberg?
In regards to the historic preservation, which I
would think vintage more than historic, but whatever. Doesn't the city need to declare that area a historic district first?
The buildings can be put on the register building by building. And so we're going to work with Pete Brown at the state because this is a new era for preservation, because now these are 50 years old, the prairie style, Midwest, modern. These are newer historic preservation buildings. So it's a new conversation with them. And I'm assuming we will be talking with the city about it as well.
Okay. And then also in regards to the funding of the project, just trying to keep the chain of events in my mind. So you're asking us for a letter of support to go to the Board of Housing. And they approve that, then they provide you the funding?
Yes, the 2-minute version of how that works is that the tax credits are allocated by the IRS to every state, and then the state housing agency, the Montana Board of Housing, has them, we compete for them, and when they award us credits, then we will take them to a syndicator and we will sell the credits. The investor will get credits for the next 10 years, and we'll get the equity up front to put it in the bricks and mortar of the building.
And then, so the current entity that has purchased on your behalf
is a fellow nonprofit here in Montana, NeighborWorks Montana. HRDC out of Bozeman is also a member network, and so is Homeward. And so we approached them to hold the building for us because it became an issue with the seller. They wanted us to either purchase it or they were going to do a development, and we felt like the need for affordable housing was strong enough that we'd be willing to take that risk. And so NeighborWorks Montana had some low interest financing. They were able to purchase it on our behalf, and we have a concurrent buy-sell with them that as soon as we are awarded and can close our tax credit funding, we'll purchase the project from them.
So they borrowed to pay for that then?
Yes, out of they're a CDFI, and it's a community lending institute, so they were able to get some lower interest money together and loan it to us, and we're the guarantors on it.
So currently owned then by this entity from Bozeman. I'm just trying to see what happens if this is your second time around. If this gets delayed or denied continually for X amount of years, what envisions then do we see happening with that property?
I act like it was simple for us to go ahead and make that purchase and have NeighborWorks Montana make that purchase. It was a big risk for our board as well, so we asked those same internal questions. It should take another year or two potentially for the tax credits. We've been looking at some other options as far as how to build that out. It's a very complex building, but the more we know from this exercise and the work that Ron and his team are doing, we feel like there might be a couple of other options we could pursue. But if worst come to worst, and we would need to walk away from the project in the sense, I think we want to come back to the community and ask in what process should we look at disposing of the property, putting it out for public offerings. We'd come back to you and have that conversation. I'm sure it could be sold and gone to market rate easily at some point, but we're not there yet. And we feel comfortable. A project in both Billings took 5 years to 5 asks, and we're hoping it won't take that long for Livingston. And we feel pretty confident in this year's round.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Commissioner Hoagland?
More of a comment. I really appreciate the updates. It's an exciting project. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. And you've been here more than almost anyone presenting to us. So I appreciate that because I feel like it's really a part of our community, this project, versus this is a project that's brought to us once. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And we feel it's very important to be open and tell you the risks that we're having on the financing, but also it is your project, it is your community, and it's a significant asset and a pretty big piece of the neighborhood. So it only works if you guys are behind it. So welcome. Thank you for your continued support.
Very welcome. I think since you're here and you're right here at this point, maybe we should take up action item A so that you don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting and you can.
That would be wonderful. It'd be nice to go home tonight.
Yeah. Be great. So if there's no objection from the commission, maybe we can skip over to action item A. which is the approval letter of support for Homeward Housing Development Incorporated. And as always, we would need to get started with a motion from the commission.
I make a motion to approve action item A, letter of support for Homeward Housing Development.
Oh, there's a motion by Commissioner Hoagland and a second by Commissioner Friedman. Commission discussion, questions, clarification. I have a few because my name's on here to sign it, so I want to make sure that I know where some of the information came from. So I was surprised to see in the letter that the home sale prices nearly rising 30% in our area. And where did you get that information from? Local realtors or?
I'm trying to remember offhand because a lot of the rental information was done by the market study we had commissioned again this year, and it was updated, and I believe it came from I don't remember the name of the organization of realtors for this area. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but we can give you the source documentation and send it to you if you'd like. But it came from a third party.
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Absolutely.
That'd be very helpful. And then where did the information come about the impact from Airbnb and VRBO?
That's been something that a lot of different entities have been trying to wrap their head around that impact, and I believe it came from the same source. So I'll make sure I get with Andrea and send you guys the cited information on there. And we actually, that might have been in the third-party rental market study, because we asked him to start thinking about that and trying to communicate it through that kind of beta testing, because we don't really know how much the impact is for sure. I think we're still trying to wrap our heads around it since it's a new type of thing. So we'll follow up and make sure you have the source documentation for that as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any public comment on action item A, which is a letter of support for Homeward for this project that's in the works? Any public comment? All right, let's have roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Motion passes.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
be back.
And you can, if you're in town, stop by the city offices tomorrow and you can pick up that signed letter of support.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the presentation and coming out. I appreciate it. Okay, so we are moving on to public hearings. We do have one public hearing tonight. It's resolution number 4750, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, adopting the City of Livingston road policy. Mr. Carduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a continuation of last meeting's call for the public hearing. We discussed portions of the growth plan at that time, but the major portions of this is an iterative process. This is just the beginning product. It's not a final college product.
Perfect. Thank you. Public hearing is now open on resolution number 4750, accepting the preliminary growth policy for the City of Livingston. Is there any public comment? Public comment? Hearing none. This public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion from the commission on accepting or passing resolution number 4750?
I make the motion that we approve resolution number 4750.
Second. Okay, so there's a motion by Commissioner Hoagland and a second by Commissioner Friedman. Is there any commission discussion, questions, clarification for the administration at all? Commissioner Sandberg?
Thank you. I think when we looked at this at the last meeting, it was stated to us this document is not a legal binding document at all. Mr. Woodhull made that comment. And I had asked this prior regarding the amendments. I don't understand why we would ask for community amendments to a non-legal binding document. Because in reality, the person has a problem with the growth policy, they have to go back to our policy and codes that actually enforce the growth policy. So why wouldn't the amendment deal with a policy and code, which is where it's going to have to go anyway if there's an amendment? I don't understand the language. I also don't understand, I would be curious to know where the fee amount came from. And it's extremely vague when it says the amendment process will proceed according to one or both of the following. We have absolutely no criteria to delineate which way we're going to follow and why. I would propose to just remove Chapter 7. Page 30 of the document, page 59 of the agenda, sorry.
Does the administration or legal want to address that, or would you like us to address that?
Well, you can obviously talk about it amongst yourself, but just from the administration's point of view, as far as to which one should be used, it's just a matter of whether you're on the planning board or not. If you're not, then it would have to be through petition. If you are, then it's addressed through a motion of the planning board. That was to cover the planning board wishing to amend it themselves, not from a community input. So number one would be community input. Number two would be the planning board wishing to amend the document themselves. I can't speak to where the fee comes from specifically. Probably is based off of our other fees upon making applications, but I don't know the exactness of the dollar amount. As far as being able to amend the growth policy, with or without this chapter, the growth policy is amendable. All of our products are amendable, so we could still amend it. There would just be no official process for it, so it would be whatever the administration or planning board wish to use at that time. We could bring it forward to the commission and it could still be amendable. As to why you would want to amend it, I would say from this point, it'd be the same reason you want a growth policy. You want to make sure the growth policy is accurate, currently reflects the intent of both the administration and the commission. So if a particular portion was outdated, or the commission changes direction or vector on that particular item, then you could amend the growth policy to be consistent with the intent of the commission. So that would be why you would want to change it. But other than that, the administration has no particular wish in how it's accomplished. It's really up to the commission.
Yeah, I guess I can see, I mean, I just don't understand the citizen. I'm trying to think of a real life use case where a citizen is going to come in and say they want to amend the growth policy. And I mean, and also I think in there upon resolution of the Livingston City Planning Board, they don't have the authorization. I mean, it still has to come before the commission, like anything else the planning board has, which is not described in there either. So I just think the whole language is extremely misleading. And petition of one of the more landowners of property affected by a proposed amendment. Is it that they can only protest if we change the policy?
I think this would be if the landowner wanted to change the growth policy as it affects their property. But as you stated, there's no regulatory guidance to the growth policy, so there's no direct impact. It would just be if someone wanted to change the general direction and intent of the administration and the commission. So I'm not convinced it's necessary, but that's completely up to you guys.
I mean, and I guess then do we want to allow people to be able to come in and say, we don't think business is good for Livingston, or we don't agree? And I mean, there's just no criteria. I guess it just makes no sense. First, it's just not defined for the criteria, and second of all, anything that's really gonna affect a property owner is in code and policy, and we have a completely separate procedure for that. So I just, not quite sure I understand paragraph 1 and why it's there.
I think the intent would be for the community to be able to go to the planning board, not to the commission, and go through the process as you would with any other, the adjustments board or zoning change, where you would go through the advisory committee first before it came to the commission.
Can we state that and remove a fee?
We certainly. I would just amend it by motion, and then we can make any change.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
I'm wondering if this isn't referring more to zoning changes. Because the planning board is kind of functioning as the planning board zoning board as well. So I think that this is referencing a change to the growth policy, which also includes the zoning policy of the commission as well. So I think where you get the fee is if, like we experienced here earlier this year, where someone wanted to change the zoning of a particular area within Livingston, they had to go through a process, and that process extended a lot of time and effort on behalf on the part of the administration to do that.
And I would agree with that assessment, then that's what it should say, or actually then that language should be implied to our zoning policy and not have it here, because it doesn't, you and I may think that's the spirit of the language, but that's not how it reads. So I think if that's what we want to do, we just need to change the appropriate document to have, because this is a growth policy again, so we're not talking about zoning. So what you described would actually need to be documented in our zoning policy, that if somebody wanted to change that and pay a fee or look into it, etc.
Can we relook at that particular section? Is this, and maybe the planning department can see if that's exactly what we're talking about. It's mainly for zoning changes.
I would agree that there's no need to charge a fee in order to, there aren't effective landowners in this case because this isn't regulatory. It's not. There is no action that would be taken that's legal out of this document. So I could see it absolutely to amend the language to say amendments will be presented to the planning board and then given to the commission for final approval. That's simple and straightforward. If there's a fee that needs, can't imagine there would be a fee that needs to go with that.
I may add one more question. That is this the only place we state within our policies that how to do a zoning change? Or is there?
The zoning
this
ordinance specifically addressed that. So
okay. So maybe this might be a little bit redundant then.
I think it might be. I think it probably was just copied out of the zoning.
Okay.
The zoning ordinance on how to make an amendment, but I'll speak to that.
Okay. Well, I think Commissioner Sanders is on the floor.
So with that being said, because it is, in our zoning ordinances and policies, if you go through them, I mean, every criteria is listed there of what you can and cannot do, what the requirements are for building or not building, etc. And if somebody wants to amend that, like we have, it either goes before the planning board or the Board of Adjustments currently, depending on where it falls. And then some come to us for final approval. We may want to look at what we give the authority of the planning board and the Board of Adjustments authority to decide without coming to us, but that's another topic of discussion. So for this one, since I think what we're trying to look at here is requests by citizens that may require additional work by administration. I believe that is covered in our current zoning and code language. And so for this document, which is just the growth policy, I would like to make an amendment to the motion that under chapter 7 just states that an amendment process.
Excuse me, Commissioner Sandberg, before you make your amendment motion, can Commissioner Hoagland have a little bit of time to ask her question?
Certainly.
I'm not positive where this part of the chapter or the document came from, but I know this is where I'm worried about completely changing it versus just like taking this section out for today until we get a really good, well-written piece of information or a chapter. But the state requires that we have a growth policy. So there's some requirements through the state, and that's why I feel that we may be missing that something that's required within state law when it comes to growth policies. And I feel like when we developed this document, we looked at a lot of different policies throughout the state and tried to kind of follow and pick and choose kind of what fit into our community, as well as what was legal. So I want to make sure that we're not changing something that we need to have in there, but I don't know that information yet. So I don't know if that would be a possibility too, Sarah, as far as instead of amending this part or changing the wording of this, could we take this out until we make sure that we have this correct and we rewrite it and bring it back to us? Or is that a waste of time?
I think you have three options. Basically, you can table it and bring it back once the question is asked. You can amend it, and say this process in accordance with state law, and then you would do it in accordance with state law, so that would cover that aspect of it. Or you can just delete it altogether, and if we find out later that it does need to be in there, we can. So I think those are the three basic options.
I'd love feedback on like those are three great options.
Commissioner Sandberg?
Yeah, so I think, Jarrell, if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, you're concerned that perhaps by law we need to have some sort of amendment process in the document. So I guess for the sake of trying to move things along and realizing we haven't had a growth policy forever, I will make a motion that we accept the current growth policy minus chapter 7. And that will be my motion. And I don't know if I need to, I have more to say. So how does that work? Do we need a?
I'll let you go ahead and say, and then make a motion, and then we'll wait for a second.
I think parliamentary, she can make a motion, and then there's required discussion. So at that point, you can discuss the motion, and then we can go with it.
Okay. Well, so my motion would be to accept the growth policy without chapter 7 at this moment. My idea would be then that we receive clarification from the administrative team on the requirements of the amendment policy, and if we are required to have one, that it has language that's not redundant to something we already have covered in our zoning policies.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion regarding an amendment to the original motion. And that amendment is to remove chapter 7. So there's now commission discussion, commission questions, clarification, comments. Yeah, the only thing I'd like to mention is that I'd kind of be in favor of tabling it, only because the question I have is this, without even passing it without this chapter, is this a document that's going to be put into immediate use? I'm asking anyone on that one? Mr. Cardus.
This is one of those great answers where it ends. Yes, it will be put into immediate use. It will become the growth policy and the value document for planning and growth decisions in Livingston. However, it's still just a strategic, visionary document. It's not something that, if we disagree with something in here, we absolutely can't go against it. Each decision will still be made independently. However, it would become effective as the guiding document for the vision and the theory and how we would grow from this point forward.
That's my only comment. Any other comments? Public comment? We're going to take a roll call on the amendment first. Can we have roll call, please?
Okay. Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Copeland, yes, Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Now we can vote on the original motion, which has now been amended. And we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Copeland, yes, Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right. So moving on, we don't have any ordinances tonight. We do have a couple resolutions. Resolution number 4751, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with Green Acres Homeowners Association to move the City of Livingston's water main serving the Brookstone subdivision. Mr. Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a long-standing agreement between Green Acres and the city. The city provides water to Green Acres, so they pay us for the water. However, the system itself past Maple Street is owned by the homeowners association. So it's a privately owned water distribution system. However, it's city water that currently goes through that system. The Green Acres Homeowners Association does own a well, however, that is not connected to the water system. It is a standalone well in the park area that's used for irrigation in the park. So the citizens are already receiving water from the city. All this does is it adds connections to that water for redundancy, and maintenance. So if there's now a problem with the original 10-inch pipe that goes in there, we will be able to shut the water supply off and then be able to work on that particular item, as well as some of the other neighborhoods. We can work on sections instead of having to shut the entire neighborhood off of water if there's a problem. Additionally, it does give you backups as far as firefighting is concerned. Both the rural chief and Chief McGinnis are in favor of having multiple connections so that there is a problem, they then still have the capability to fight fires in that area. This also is probably the first step in moving towards annexation of the area. Since they're already on our water supply, this helps the infrastructure, kind of gives us a little more knowledge of what the infrastructure looks like and some redundancy. So it's improvements that would need to be made after the annexation. So from that perspective, the administration is in favor of this memorandum of understanding. In this case, the city will do the installation and the homeowners association will pay for the parts needed for
Great. Is there a motion from the commission on resolution number 4751?
Yeah, I make a motion that we pass resolution 4751.
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman and a second by Commissioner Copeland. Commission discussion. Commissioner Sandberg?
I'm confused. No, I'm not confused.
Good.
Just historically, so currently right now Green Acres is county
They are.
and we provide them water. Do they pay the same rate then?
Yes, they're in the same fee schedule as the rest of the city. They have same meters, same reading system.
Okay. And then, so the water system was put in when the subdivision was built. So back to your statement about the infrastructure, with an annexation, would that require some new water and sewer lines?
It would absolutely require new sewer lines because there are none. The closest it comes down is Brookstone. And it wouldn't necessarily require new infrastructure, but it would probably require some upgrades to the current infrastructure.
So is that something then in the discussions of annexation, would that be one of those special tax districts?
It would probably be a special improvement district for those improvements.
And then remind me, is that, how does that get passed? How do the homeowners decide whether or not they want to annex? And
In this case, the city would start the annexation process and they would be able to protest it. I think there's a significant portion of Green Acres that has signed a no protest waiver for that particular item for the annexation. So some of them would not have the ability to, but they would be able to protest it. Although it's in general, we're not looking to annex them against their will. The homeowners association has started those conversations. And I think most of the citizens are interested in that right now due to some of the septic tank problems they're starting to experience.
sure, okay. So I think that, so the infrastructure's there, we're already supplying the water, but annexation's a whole other topic of discussion then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other commission comments, discussion? The only question I have is within the memorandum of understanding on page 65 and point 4, it does say that the homeowners association does not have to pay for the costs associated with the actual connections. The city of Livingston may require additional valving not to exceed 4 valves to be installed. So do we have any idea where those would be? We're already going to have 2, but we think we may need up to 4.
The addition of the valve would be to enable that maintenance that I was talking about. So they go probably at T intersections. There's a couple ones that have been identified. So you can shut off water that flows south and flows north, so you can isolate certain parts of the infrastructure to be able to do the work and still provide water to the rest of the subdivision for both just regular use and for firefighting. So those would be the additional valves that would be strategically located to be able to shut off sections of the subdivision.
Now, did I read something different? Was this originally initiated in 1959?
The original agreement for water supply was initiated in 1959 when Green Acres was built.
Okay.
It is a long time.
And did they have water at that time?
That was the original agreement to tie them into city water.
Okay, so they got it immediately then?
I think that's when the houses were built. I'm not exactly sure, but yes. It was in 1959 when they became part of the city water system. As far as
We're going to be ready for some water line replacement here pretty soon, huh?
another reason
They're looking
amiable to annexation.
amiable to annexation. Okay, such a nice word, amiable. All right, is there any other commission comments? Any public comment? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be sure to state your name and address for the record.
Mary Beebe, 19 South E. This was the topic of the day when I was ready for city commission in 2004. And I thought I would never see it come up again. And I'm so glad it's coming up again. It was a pretty contentious time and the arguments were still the same, but I'm guessing that the septic systems are becoming more problematic over time and the benefits or the perceived benefits to the residents are more apparent to them than they were in 2004 because the city the commission voted against it because of the protests. And so just a point of historical interest that this particular arrangement is so peculiar. I don't understand exactly how it happened in the first place with them having built the infrastructure and the city giving them water, but no other arrangement. But that's all. I don't have anything really profound to say about it, but it's like, oh my gosh, here it is again. And I'm so glad that.
This is time for you.
Yeah, are you saying that so I have a question. The homeowners of Green Acres are now approaching the city. Is that correct? Is it the homeowners association
the homeowners association and the city have negotiated this memorandum of understanding. So was a joint effort between the city and the homeowners association.
You're talking about the original.
No, the current memorandum of understanding to add these valves.
Okay,
It's a
so-
joint project.
So actually, the initiative is coming from them at this point, or there's requests?
We're definitely in discussions.
Okay,
So there's information and suggestions going back and forth.
okay, well, I'm pleased, and I'm surprised, so pleasantly surprised. Thank you.
Very welcome. We do have a nice new wastewater treatment plant coming online that they want to tie into probably,
Oh, that might have something to do with it.
unless their septic systems are failing, so there's benefits all the way around. Any other public comment? Do you have a motion? May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Hopper,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg,
For,
Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution number 4752, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, extending the existing contract between the City of Livingston and Montana Waste System Incorporated for the disposition of solid waste. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the administration would request that the commission table resolution 4752. There's some new information from Montana Waste Systems this morning. They're willing to discuss some different parts of the contract that we requested earlier. So it looks like they may be willing to change certain portions that we had requested. So I'd like to hold off on this until we finish those new negotiations. We will bring it back before the commission for approval.
Sounds good. You want us to make a motion on that?
Motion to table.
Okay. Is there a motion from the commission to table resolution 4752?
Yeah, I make a motion on table resolution 4752.
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Friedman, second by Commissioner Vogel to table. Well, you have a question?
Commissioner comments? On the
Table?
motion?
Okay, go ahead.
So when you are negotiating, some questions that I have in the language, so I figure since you're headed to the table, when it talks about the one-time fee only, I think that's a little misleading because it's saying a 5.5% one-time fee.
What page are you on now? Sorry.
82. Paragraph 5.2 is amended to include the following. So I'm going to try and make this simple, but if currently we're paying $1 and they give us a 5% increase, we're paying $1.05. Now is the new level set at $1.05 moving forward?
Yes.
So that is not a one-time only. That is a increase in the first year that we have inherited forever. So that language to me should state exactly what's happening. That's not just a one-time increase. That's a sustaining increase that we're going to have to deal with.
It will be a consistent rate.
Yep.
It is only increased one time.
I know, but it doesn't ever go back down.
No.
Right. You know, because one could read that it's going to go up for 5% one year to pay for the green box, and then it'll go back down. So when they say a one-time only, I think it's extremely misleading.
You have suggested wording you would like.
It'll be increased 5.5 the first year or something, because it's ongoing. It's never going to go back down. Does that make sense? Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The base is always going to change. The base is going to, so if we were at $1 now, our base is now going to be 1.05, $1.05, which means every year that CPI increases, and then it's going to go to 107, and then the CPI is going to be on top of the 107. So the 5 accumulates every year. The joys of compound interest. The other thing that I found odd was the CPI, because when I read it the first time, I was curious which CPI are they using, because there's 5,006 of them out there. I would be interested to know what actually they provide for us that shows that CPI rate historically, and what we have been paying for increases, and how they calculate that, and what they present to us each year and say, this is your increase for this year. I didn't have time to go online and look at the parameters that they're billing us under to see if they're favorable or not for us. But I did find it interesting that they were using western cities with population between 50,000 and 150, which we don't fall into that criteria. So I was just curious. Being a business, I'm sure it's something that's favorable in there, but it might be worth looking at to see if we can get a better CPI rate.
Commissioner Sandberg, may I
Oh.
point of clarification?
Yes.
Where did you get the information about the
Oh,
population? I missed that.
sorry. So page 72 of the agenda, I believe. No. Bear with me until I find it. Oh, here we go. Yes, page 72 of the agenda, which is page 3 of the agreement. Towards the bottom, it has section 1.13 Consumer Price Index. So there's a variable amount of different computer price indexes out there. There's not just one. So when I first read that, that was a little confusing for me. But then they go on to define it as what they're going to use is calculate the average of the sum of U.S. city average and the West urban size BC 50 to 150,000. I'm guessing that means population between 50 and 150,000. So it sounds like they're taking the average of all U.S. cities and then the average of just Western urban cities and averaging those two. So I think I don't know. Go ahead.
And I think that the way it reads in there is because of the clause with the city of Great Falls, with the land, which is the landfill he uses, that says they cannot charge anyone less than they charge the city of Great Falls. So the consumer price index calculation is actually based on Great Falls, not on Livingston.
Oh, so we're held.
Yes. And that's
Interesting.
because it's their landfill. So they get preference.
Is that somewhere in here in this agreement?
Which part?
That Great Falls dictates what goes on?
No, that is in their contract with Great Falls, I believe, with the landfill.
Well, I think they would have to disclose to us if another contract supersedes, absolutely.
They have disclosed it. I mean, that was part of the discussions.
Oh, can we have a list of disclosures? When we get to the point when we approve it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah.
You're very welcome. Is there any other questions, clarifications on the existing contract before we go back, we table it and they go back to the negotiations? Any other points to highlight? Yeah, just one comment, Commissioner Sandberg, on the rewording of the rate increase. Maybe the administration can come up with something that isn't ambiguous
Yeah,
in that part to clearly define that. Because you're right, it's a cumulative, as are all our rate increases are.
yeah. And if I may follow up on that, what I would like to see as well is, so what are we currently paying? And, per ton, I guess it is. So now what is it going to be at 5.5? And then what is that expense to us, to the city now to pay? What does that 5.5% this first year equate to?
Okay.
As our entire garbage bill for the city.
Maybe that's
dollar amount?
Yes, please, thank you. So if we're paying $50,000 or $100,000 to Great Falls right now, or the company that serves Great Falls, so a 5% increase is going to be 50,000.
Well, if you look at in our consent items, if I may.
Yeah.
you look at our consent items, there's a $77,000 and $78,000 bill that went out to wastewater systems for June and July.
Okay, so more like
So
a
you can
million.
add- That's a monthly charge.
Okay,
So you could probably add 5% to that and get a sense of where, close probably where we'd be.
all right.
So you're probably looking at $3,000 to $4,000 extra a month.
Right, so I'm just, I guess where I'm coming from is with what's proposed to provide us a roll-off box, and it's costing us X amount of dollars, which I don't know what that is. Does it pencil out?
Does it pencil out as far as?
Having them do that, I mean, would it be for, if we look at, if we had to go out and buy our own green box, say it's, just throwing out numbers, say it's $10,000, and we're expecting our green waste tonnage is gonna be, 1,000 tons, and what it currently costs us to haul that away, what does that figure look like compared to what they're asking us to pay? Are they equitable?
But in this case, we'd have to have a contract with the landfill. So we'd have to contract with a different landfill or the same landfill. And then we'd have to buy the semi trucks and trailers to use, because we try to average 30 tons a trailer. So it would be
I'm just pointing out for negotiations, you can go in and say, you know what, in reality, it's only gonna cost you this, so why are you guys charging us this? If it comes out to be that way.
And Roger did an excellent job of presenting his case on like price increase, mostly with government regulation, which we would also have to meet. So we looked through each and every one of his costs, and he was very open with them. And it's a fair reasonable rate. We give you all the information I need if you like.
I just wanna know what your analysis was that you came to that conclusion.
Yeah, we looked at different scenarios. Just the startup costs of just the semi-trailers and trucks alone is a significant startup cost. We can and have looked at other landfills, closer ones, so you can reduce the transportation cost. But for the rate he's charging for this particular length of contract, it gives us 5 years to figure out if there's a better answer as far as distance goes. That's the biggest downfall as far as this current contract goes, is it is trucked all the way to Great Falls, which is a significant distance.
Right, but that increase is only for the green waste, right?
No, this is for the solid waste. This is the base rate for solid waste.
So it's going up 5.5%, not just because we're asking them to take care of our green waste, but because
No,
of
they
everything.
are not taking care of our green waste.
I thought I read in there that they were providing us a,
They are providing us trailers for spring cleanup for free, but that's not part of the increase still.
so the 5.5 is just their, for all of their garbage, their cost of business to us. They say that they need to charge us, we need to bump up the base by 5.5%.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I was misunderstood how that language was, but then sparks a different curiosity. So we'll just see what comes out. So thank you.
Any other commission comments? Okay, so, motion to table.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzman. Yes. Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Or
Motion passes. Moving on to the last item of the evening, discuss, approve, deny city manager signing of TSEP contract. Mr. Carduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The TSEP contract is one of the requirements for the TSEP grant. This is a $625,000 grant that they are providing for the wastewater treatment facility. This is the standard TSEP contract. The basic requirements laid out are that we filed their reporting requirements. That we meet all the standard state addendums for contracts, i.e. the non-discrimination, just the standard TSEP funding requirements. And this is the last piece of information that needs to be approved by the commission before we will award the contract for the wastewater treatment.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to start off with from the commission?
I make a motion, we approve action item B.
I'll second.
So there's a motion by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Hoagland. Commission discussion, points of clarification. Commissioner Sandberg?
I'll just make a statement that though I'm against the facility and have been from the beginning, and especially as the costs continue to rise, I will support grant money to help pay for it.
Any other comments? Any public comment? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopewell. Yes. Commissioner Bridger.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg.
For
Motion passes. That's all the items for our agenda this evening. We do have city manager and commission comments. So comments from the city manager.
I think just in general, I'd like to thank the Commission for the support in getting this contract let to, for the wastewater treatment plant. The ability to let this contract early will actually result in significant cost savings to the project because we can start soon. Contractors are moving equipment in and they are ready to get going on the project. So that in and of itself will save quite a bit of money in the water. So I appreciate the efforts to get that through. And we'll look forward to giving you updates on the positive progress of the facility.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Hey, commission comments. Commissioner Sandberg.
Was thinking about the public restrooms at the guest house, and I know that Mr. Bennett had requested that be a topic of discussion. And thinking about that, because it's very frustrating to me, the large sum of money that part of the commission approved to build those restrooms, and we are not reaping the benefit of the use at all. And that the URA does not report to the administration, but it reports to the commission. What can we do as a commission to demand a solution to this problem by the URA? Because it's, I mean, if I was a building owner downtown with that amount of, was it close to $400,000 that was given to this one entity, I would be very upset. So what, I'm just, I guess, when will we have the discussion, or is it something that we can simply have our chairman write a letter to the URA requesting a solution be provided? Just open-ended, so.
Okay. Well, that is going to be a topic. I talked with Mr. Cardus earlier later last week about that on the agenda, and there's some more information that the administration is getting together in order to present it to the commission.
Okay.
Mr. Cardus?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to add, and I forgot to mention this in my city manager comments, the URA has requested a work session with the commission for the 29th of August. So if that is amenable to, we can add that to the agenda for that work session. They are going to send me agenda topics that they would like to put on the agenda, and so I can also take agenda items from the commission. We can add those to the work session.
So we want to have that in the evening?
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm going to be here.
On the 29th?
Mm-hmm.
And we go to a different date. I just suggested the 29th because it's our off week we have 2 off weeks from commission meetings. So if we'd rather look at a different date, I can submit that to them as well.
Is there a different day that week that might work for you?
No, I'm going to be on most of that week. I mean, Monday would be the only option, or sometime next week.
Okay,
But I'm just one. I mean, if it works for the majority, it works for the majority. I mean,
I think if we're going to meet with the URA, it's probably best if we're going to go sit and work with them, that the entire commission has the opportunity to weigh in on whatever is being discussed. I wouldn't want to see anyone missing. So when would you be back in September?
Well, I hope to be back for the meeting on the 5th. So.
Okay. And how does And how's September 12th for everyone? Since that's a off week. Labor Day is the 4th, right?
Correct. Is there no, I just hate to see, you know, by then we're pushing it off another month almost. Is there any way we could do something next week? The week of the 21st?
Did you say Monday was the only day you're available?
No, I'm available the week of the 21st.
Oh.
I'm just, and on the week of the 28th, I'm only available on Monday.
How does the 22nd look for everyone else? It's a Tuesday evening again. Is it okay for administration?
Yes, 22nd fine for administration.
Anyone else on the commission have any objection about the 22nd? We're okay?
I may not be able to be there the whole time, but.
What time
School
was
starts
Oh, is that the day school starts?
Before,
Oh, okay. What is the earliest that you can make?
5:30.
5:30. You start at 5:30, would that be helpful for you?
yes, I think so.
And we don't know what's on the agenda or how long they'd like to meet for?
Well, I think their main agenda, they haven't sent me the agenda yet, but I'm pretty sure their main agenda items are going to be bonding and extending the
Okay.
And
options for it.
does it sound like that date would be okay with them as well?
I would have to check with them,
Okay,
but I
so-
think it's probably easier for the commission to set a date that you've already flexed.
So why don't we tentatively say 22nd at 5:30? Here? We can get this meeting room?
Will that allow you enough time for the information you need on the restrooms? So we can have that discussion as well?
Yeah, I have most of it. I just wanted to make have one more conversation with people that were involved in the original lease, so that I can try to understand the intent as well as the letter of the lease.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for being accommodating.
You're welcome.
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Friedman? Yeah.
I just want to, I walk my dog through the park every morning. And I want to thank the crew that takes care of the Sackler Jail. They didn't have any seasonal help this year, but they're going ahead and doing the irrigation system on their own, which is quite a deal. And so I appreciate that. But one of the focal points of the city is the park. And Mike and the rest of the people working on it do a great job. So appreciate all the help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Mobley?
I only have one statement from citizens that I've heard this multiple times, but it's more of a complaint. And that is the speeding that does go on through the park. And because of the width of the roads, kind of the smoothness, the thoroughfare of it, people use it not so much as a park street, but as a just a regular street. So I don't know if there's any ideas that we could move forward in time to deal with that problem. But I know even before I was on the commission, I watched a girl's tires go up off the ground around the corner one time. She was going so fast. So I know that it's a great place to speed. So I'd like to see something to maybe slow it down in the park.
All right. So one of the requests, if I can, if it's acceptable to the commission, one of the requests I made in the past was to have all the boards that report to the commission actually report to the commission on a regular basis. At least once a year, if we couldn't get it to be twice a year, but there's a number of boards. Some of them do it automatically. There's some boards that do, other ones we never see it all, but they're advisory boards that report to us. So I'd like to get a second. Maybe I'd like to request that the administration contact the boards with the idea of giving annual reports from their chairmen to the commission on their activities, what they're doing, and anything that we might be able to do for them as well. So that's a request. Is there a second from any commissioner here?
Yeah, I think so.
That's okay. So there's 2 seconds. So good.
Can I add a stipulation?
Yes,
12 minutes or less?
sure.
And if,
No, there won't come all at one time.
do you know all their chairs and everything yet, or,
I'm sure we'll hunt them down.
okay. Well, if you need help, I'm sure we know some of it, you know, because we're all on some of the boards, so.
Thank you very much. The only other few things I wanted to at least present to the commission is, as everyone knows, we have listening sessions once a month, and myself and another commissioner usually attend. So in July, Commissioner Hoagland was with me, just this last Saturday, Commissioner Free went with me. So I'd just like to mention some of the things that are on the community's minds when they come to meet with the commission during those Saturday morning meetings. So one was, I have, sometimes these are cryptic notes, so I may not remember exactly what the comments were. One was library cleaning, and apparently, is that something that's contracted by the library themselves?
I would assume it's done through the library board.
Okay. I wasn't, put that one off. You don't need to write that one down. Trails. One of the things they were concerned about was maintenance of trails. There was a suggestion by one community member that the Parks and Recreation Department open the guest house bathrooms. I'm just passing it on. The other thing was someone was mentioning that there were still a lot of tree branches around town to pick up from the tree incident, but not the cold weather, snow, where it broke a lot of branches. So they saw still piles of tree branches. And another person was talking about the grooming around the river band shell on 9th Street.
Is it bad?
I don't know if they were happy or sad.
They've done a great job of cleaning it up.
Okay, so they're happy.
Okay.
This was an interesting one, which was history for commissioners. And this one came up because they said new commissioners or new people to the community that maybe not have been here that long sometimes don't have a historical perspective, culture, economics, and amenities around the community. So maybe that's something we can incorporate into the next orientation. Yeah. Then this week, a lot of conversation was about affordable housing. So I know that's not something that we necessarily touch on, but we can facilitate in groups like Homeward come through and we can assist them and support them. All right, that's all I had for this evening. Is there any public comment?
Are we at the close? Is this it? Or
This is it.
okay? Well,
You came right at the end.
well, I didn't want to. Just didn't want to.
You know a lot of what?
I just didn't want to. I wanted to use my time properly, so I just was gauging that this may be the time to.
And why don't you state your name and address in the microphone?
Okay, I
for the
will.
record.
Jay Keeper, 345 South Main, for this. Hello, honey. Reading in the paper and seeing on there how it seems the only way that the city can raise revenue is to raise the price of sewage and water for services. Am I not correct?
You're asking is the only,
Your only revenue stream is to raise the price of water and sewage within the city limits.
that's one of them.
Okay. Well, let me tell you another revenue stream that could be afforded on there. Thursday through Sunday, I work at the museum on Chinook. I sit up front. And if the police want to start making a killing on tickets, they should be parking a car between like 8 on there and 9 and 4 and 6 on there. It is like a speedway on there. And I know that at 3rd Street, there's a dip on there. And if the dip wasn't there, it would be the price, it would be going 55, 60 miles an hour. And there's a resident that's, renting the front house right across the street of from the museum. His name is Shadow. He works at Ace Hardware, and I guess he contacted the city and said, you know what, you need to put these signs like you've got on Yellowstone Street and a different geyser on there. And he got no response from the city, or I don't know who he talked to, so he got an employee discount on there, so it's up there. But I think that there needs to be more basically police presence during certain times of like in the morning, lunch, and evening on there. I mean, like sometimes my car's kitty corner from the museum, and you take your life in your hands using the crosswalk, walking across the street. There, I'm deadly serious as far as I've just been talk about a dangerous town to live in. There, Livingston can be right up there. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Is there a motion from the commission for adjournment? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 8:05.
No, let's see.